Namaste, Professor Kumar. Mute.
Thank you. Good morning and good evening to you. It must be 12 evening for you.
Good night. Yeah.
Yeah.
12 बजने जा रहा है.
12 बजने जा रहा है ना. So we will start and this. We're just waiting for the other speakers to join, and also seeing this how many. Oh, okay. We are still to go 5-6 minutes. 6 minutes. Yesterday we had a very good discussion, and with you and all
Do
other.
you do a feedback survey or anything after the
We
sessions?
get the feedback also, yeah, and then they separately also send the mail and also in the chat box also, and we also get personally, they get in touch with us and all.
You don't do a survey like
Sir,
a
we should
feedback form?
feedback form in the end it is there.
Achha.
That we do at the end of the how it was received and all. So how is Canada? It must be very cold now.
It's getting cold. Abhi to we are still having some plus side temperatures. About daytime temperature is below 10, between 5 and 10. Nighttime is -2, -3, but it will get cold. Next week is cold wave starting.
Next week.
Yeah,
Uttarakhand.
0 and below 0.
Uttarakhand, we did get this the spell of the snow.
Achha, already. Oh, that's
In
interesting.
it's very diverse. You wish to see snow, you can go there, and then if you wish to get some dry weather, then come to this other place. And if you go out from winter, go to the deep south.
Yeah.
So variety is there. Huh? And Canada must be the same. No? Okay, all over Canada is also the.
All over Canada is cold. Vancouver is more like Delhi during winter, except they don't get snow, they get rain throughout winter and cloud. Sometimes they don't see the sun for weeks at a time in Vancouver and that part of the country. We get snow and cold. -45.
Oh, -45.
Every year, at least one night, -45, 1 week of -30, and then most like at least 10 weeks of -10, -15. Very cold.
But the facilities are very resilient to the cold, huh?
Yeah, everything. Life goes on just normal.
I see Dr. Sanjay Swarastha has also joined. Welcome, Dr. Sanjay. Dr. Sanjay, can you hear me? Okay. Or he must be trying, but I can see his name. So when we talk about resilience, and if you don't put that facilities in Canada for to fight against biting cold, not biting, it's a freezing cold.
You can die in 2 hours.
You can die in 2 hours. Prevention. Can't this be
YouTube पे डाल दिया?
Muted.
Yes, Professor. Good morning.
Very good morning to you and welcome. I can introduce you to Mr. Hemant Kumar. He is the president of the Engage First in the Canada, and they are providing services to the government of Canada for the last 25 years. And so we'll be listening to him on that how social inclusion and social security measures have been brought in this. And Dr. Sanjay Swarastha is a formerly Government of India. He's a space scientist, but worked with the ISRO for long. And after taking VRS from there, he has joined UNSCAP. There he has also spent almost 10 to 15 years in ISRO. Yeah. So Sanjay, welcome. He's the chief of the disaster risk reduction of Asia, Pacific, and South Asia. Is it, Sanjay?
Yeah, thank you, Professor, for a generous introduction. And it's a pleasure to meet Hemant. And
very nice to meet you also, Mr. Shrivastava.
Yeah. Thanks to Professor Santosh. I think he is the one who keeps my network in India intact. I call him Guruji because from a space scientist to transition to the DRR world, it's all due to him.
Oh, so kind of you, Sanjay.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he has worked with the SARC Disaster Management Center also earlier and contributed at length. So,
did you know Jyoti Kumar? Jyoti in ISRO?
Yes, I know him. I know Jyoti.
He's my cousin.
Okay, great. The world is small, you know.
Yeah. He's in England now teaching.
I know he has left his for some teaching assignment, but in England, I was not very sure about it. Right?
Yeah.
And we also welcome participants. We can see that large number of 72 have joined already. So,
are we online?
Yeah, everyone is online.
Oh, okay.
This conversation is also important to participants also, that they should know that who all are there, and so that their comfort with asking questions, and also they can make this. So we can, I think we can start. What do you say, Sanjay and Hemant? Because we are waiting for Executive Director NIDM and also Dr. Vatsa. Dr. Vatsa would be joining in 5. His meeting was to be over at 11:30. So he has conveyed that he will be joining soon after the meeting. So maybe he would be joining in another 5 minutes. So with due apology to all the participants, I would just like to mention that we can start in just 5 minutes. And we are waiting for the chief guest to come, and also the executive director in NIDM to join. So so the topic which we have chosen is very, very interesting and challenging, especially in the context of South Asia. It's true for all over the world, but when it comes to inequality, but especially India is a very heterogeneous society. And in this heterogeneous society, the culture dominates. If you go to the tsunami affected area, we'll find different culture. If you go to the coastal region where we have 7,600 kilometers of coast, so their culture is different. Their social construct is different. If you go to the landlocked states, if you go to like all Himalayan states, 8 states, there also you will find Arunachal is different with Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand is different with Himachal. Himachal is different with Nagaland, kind of variety which we have. And also that we see as a kind of the plains of UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan. Rajasthan is a desert state. Gujarat is a coast and desert both. So very diverse sociocultural, with we are having as a 15 languages. So it's a continent which very rightly has been put in for India as a continent. And each of the states are having population of not more than 90, 70 to 80 lakhs of minimum population, barring few states in the northern eastern states. But with this diversity, we are doing this, and the great diversity we enjoy. And you also must be noticing that we are into the 75th years of our independence. So that's what it is written on the screen, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. with the Honorable Prime Ministers and is given this slogan. And we are also having the concern for the Prime Minister's 10-point agenda at disaster risk reduction, where he is talking about social inclusion. And also that Sendai framework, where again it is being discussed at length. And in reality, where we are. So now I think almost 5 minutes is going to over. So we would start. Let me just 1 minute. Let me check with the executive director, and I will get back to you soon. Huh? We are just waiting for the Dr. Vatsa and General Bindal would be there. He would be joining soon. He just log in. Dr. Sanjay Mihir Bhatt is also joining in 5 minutes. He has just conveyed. So the process, I think I should start with the introduction of the topic and introduction of our guest today. So let me, so we take the nod from all of you to start. Mr. Hemant and Sanjay Swarastha.
Sure.
General Bindal and Dr. Vatsa is joining in 5 minutes. So we can start by the time?
Yes.
Yes. Very good morning to all of you, friends. The hearty welcome from the National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. I am Santosh Kumar. I work with the National Institute of Disaster Management. And the topic which we have as a webinar, we say that build back better beyond bricks and mortar. You must be understanding and thinking that why this topic has been given, that long-term recovery and reconstruction, and we are talking about building back better with the bricks and beyond bricks and mortars. We are the objective which we thought to have this kind of a workshop with the internal discussion which we had with the team. And we found that most of the disaster happens in the recovery frameworks that get lost with the kind of a larger infrastructure recovery. And massive investment goes on the recovery. Like just an example to quote, like Kerala 2018 flood is 28,000 crores. And out of that, 70% of the cost is going for the housing recovery. It's very important, the social sector, but other infrastructure also consumes a lot of money. So similarly, funny cyclone. And today newspaper, if you see the Times of India is talking about that India lost almost a couple of billion rupees in terms of one cyclonic storm, or in this year 2021. So billion has become a kind of a, as if that we our childhood days we are talking about 100 rupees and 1,000 rupees. That kind of losses are actually occurring due to various disasters. And also what we see as when we talk about disaster, the whole discourse, global discourse is talking about just not the hazard, but talking about vulnerabilities and also talking about resilience. So then when it comes to resilience, that we should think about that resilience does not mean only the infrastructure and building. And everybody knows who are working in the sector, and also that attempts have been made. But disaster after disaster, when we see that where the frequency is very high, if you see that Bihar example, And if you see Bihar, disaster after disaster, flood after flood, and when we go for a recovery process and we find that people, instead of becoming resilient, they become poor and poorer even. And all the affected areas of that part is poverty ridden. The similar thing which you see in the other disaster prone states in the country, see West Bengal I was referring to. So West Bengal is also going in the same way. Similarly, which we are finding, the global data is also coming, and this pandemic, this 21 and 29 and 2020 and 20, both waves. This talking about 11 million people have been added as a new poor. So that global poverty has also increased. So what we are saying in terms of that, in the context of the changing economic social scenario, how we can redefine or reimagine our Build Back Better framework. And this Build Back Better framework, how it is actually pointing out to move ahead from just as a kind of a relief-based approach or a smaller kind of a dole for immediate recovery to the longer-term building resilience. And that is the major issues, especially when India look at the social stratification, caste, class, gender, poverty, high caste, low caste. So these kind of a thing, heterogeneity, which we have to acknowledge as a kind of a given socio-economic environment. And in this socio-economic environment, we are also looking at different kind of changes which have been tried out by different programs, policy over the years. And in the recent past also, majority of the programs have been brought in. Even in the COVID recovery, the Prime Minister's package of 20 lakh crores has been also focused on taking people out of the poverty. So that is one aspect of social stratification. Second part, which we talk about, the inequality, like access to the unequal access to the social infrastructure, and that social infrastructure, or when we talk about whether the health infrastructure, education, livelihood, skill building process, and so forth. So like health is not very much affordable in India. As 70% of the health sector facilities is available with the private sector. And it is, although the government is trying and taking advantage of this or opportunity of COVID-19 for a strengthening of the health sector, large number of programs have been initiated to ensure building resilience and better health infrastructure, insurance, and different financial mechanisms. Third is also that decision-making process, that how those who are marginalized, they are into a decision-making process in the disaster risk reduction and also a recovery when we are planning Build Back Better. So what kind of a space which we are, the governance allows to give that? Well, largely when we see as a kind of an informal sector is much more when poor people are engaged in that. So how informal sector is providing that space, that is another issue. Then we talk about what kind of a social security measures which we have been able to bring and can address in the Indo. Like a funny cyclone happened, 2018, 2019 floods of Kerala happened. So whether we are bringing some new initiative for social security, we found large number of children got affected. So many became, like a funny cyclone itself, we are saying that 5 million children in 14 districts got affected. So what is this that now we are drawing lessons from these data? Similarly, persons with disabilities. In funny cyclone, again, 1.5 lakhs of people with disabilities got affected in 14 countries. So these are the insights of the disasters which are happening in the country and the way people are affected. So many children are getting out of in the pandemic out of school. So in this kind of a scenario, when we talk about out of school, how to restore them, whether they will remain out from the school forever, whether the digital divide will also make a kind of a distinction. So when we are planning all these recovery, whether it's pandemic recovery or whether we are talking about disaster recovery, these are the issues which we are trying to understand. And we are the main core, the threat which we wish to understand from all of you, that that is that how we can move out. Each of the recovery programs get the advantage moving out from the this vulnerability to resilience. So this is the approach which we have taken, and for that I welcome my guest here today, Dr. Krishna Vatsa. Dr. Krishna Vatsa is the member of the National Disaster Management Authority, Government of India, and he has been the Relief Commissioner also in the state of Maharashtra. He belongs to Indian Administrative Services, and he always served as a collector Latu when this earthquake happened. So, he has served as a UNDP regional advisor in the region, South Asia region, and also he was Western advisor to UNDP in New York. And currently he's positioned at the National Disaster Authority. So we have invited him as a chief guest today for giving, as he's into helm of affairs of the public policy, nationally also, internationally also, his contribution has been immense. So we are grateful to him for accepting our invitation. I welcome you, Dr. Vatsa. I see you that you are there. I'm grateful indeed to welcome you and extend my heartfelt thanks on behalf of NIDM to you. We have also Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, our Executive Director in NIDM. He's there. I take this opportunity to welcome him and for supporting all this initiative which we have taken today. And his support has been immense. So I welcome him. He is a Major General in the Serving Army Officer, and he VSM, Business Seva Medal, and he has also served in the UN Peacekeeping Force and other places, and served extensively in different flood situation and earthquake situation in the country. I welcome General Bindal to you for this particular forum. And I also take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Sanjay Swarastha. Sanjay Swarastha is a UN SCAP Chief of DRR in the South Asia and West Asia region. And he has been the formerly this ISRO person, I say the missile man, and so PhD in physics, and now talking about the DRR. I welcome you, Dr. Sanjay Swarastha, this particular forum. We also have a guest from Canada, Mr. Hemant Kumar, Engage First. Is the president for and founder of this Engage First. The organization is working for supporting the government of Canada for the last 25 years in bringing different public policy in the social sector, and how is helping in the post-pandemic reforms, what kind of a new policies which have been brought. And so we wanted to understand those things, and that can be incorporated in our Build Back Better framework. He is also a computer scientist turned a kind of a policy development expert. I welcome you. For you, it's midnight from Canada, but in India, we are into of daytime. It's at 12 o'clock here. I welcome you here. Thank you very much for joining us. And I also welcome Mr. Mihir Bhatt. And Mihir Bhatt is our old friend, and he has been engaged with NIDM's initiative for long. And today also he has been kind to accept our invitation. Mihir Bhatt is heading All India Institute of Disaster Management. I will introduce him when we will invite him. And we also take this opportunity to invite, welcome Ms. S. Bhattacharya, Senior Social Development Specialist in the World Bank. She deals with the social protection and economist in the World Bank Group. So I welcome you also, Mr. Bhattacharya. And then we have Dr. Shubhasish from Tamil Nadu, the Assistant Professor and Head of the Department of Psychology for Seeking Eye. So once again, I take this opportunity to welcome all of you and all the participants, those who have joined and those who would be joining. Hearty welcome to NIDM for this particular event. So on behalf of NIDM, once again, I take this opportunity to welcome all of you. And this, may I request Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal to say a few words and welcome Dr. Vatsa also. General Bindal, are you there? Okay. I don't see, but we can request now Dr. Vatsa to kindly give his insights as inaugural address, and let's see that how do you see at the national level, and you have been engaged at all the levels, national level, local level, as a district magistrate to the relief commissioner, and now as a member of the National Disaster Authority, and wide experience. You have PhD in disaster management for George Washington University, and served the UN for long in South Asia and also in this New York office. I take this opportunity to welcome and express my gratitude for being with us today. Dr. Vatsa, please.
Thank you, Santoshji. Thanks for your kind, very generous introduction. Thanks for inviting me to this very, very important, very timely discussion. I say timely because, as you know, the Finance Commission has for the first time allocated resources for recovery and reconstruction. You know, we had a disaster risk financing system in which most of the resources would be spent on relief and response, and there was no separate allocation for recovery and reconstruction. And as a result, we would often go to the World Bank and raise loans for implementing our recovery programs. So for the first time, we have set up a distinct and a separate financial window for recovery and reconstruction. We are in the process of operationalizing this window. This window will function both at the national and state levels. And to access funds from this window, we are just in the process of finalizing the guidelines for recovery and reconstruction. We are at present, and as we speak, we are discussing various aspects of guidelines, and it definitely has devoted considerable space to the social aspects of recovery. So this discussion is very timely, very helpful, and it would also support the process of operationalization of these guidelines as well as the funding window. So please share the proceedings of this webinar with us, you know, and I'm sure it will be very valuable to us. It's also very, very timely because we are talking in the in the midst of COVID-19. We can't say that COVID-19 is over. You know, many countries are still facing this problem, and COVID-19 has again affected various segments of the population, and well, it has affected the lower income groups and middle income groups, but I think there is also, we can say that it has a disproportionate burden on the lower income groups. People are really affected. A lot of people have lost their employment and income, and it has also raised the issues of food security and some basic entitlements. So again, socioeconomic recovery for those who are affected by COVID-19 is a very key issue of development today. All the governments, all the countries are grappling with it, and we definitely need to support this policy debate within the government. As we speak, there is a huge spending bill in the US Congress that is under discussion. This is called Build Back Better Act. You know, we have been talking about Build Back Better. For the first time, one of the largest spending bills in the US Congress, you know, it's ranging from 2 trillion to 6 trillion. It has been named after Build Back Better, so it is called Build Back Better, and it primarily emphasizes a whole host of measures aimed at social recovery. So it includes provisions like 2 years of community college, child care, and universal, pre-school education, Medicare expansion, extended child tax benefits. So all kinds of social components have been covered by the Build Back Better Act. And I am sure that these kind of initiatives would really bring the social aspects of recovery very much within the fold of the practice of recovery. In India too, last year, several big announcements made by Honorable Prime Minister aimed at social aspects of recovery. Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana. All those big programs included the social aspects of recovery. It included food security. It included direct benefit transfer, cash transfer to large number of farmers, women, retired pensioners. So there is definitely a big recognition of bringing the poor within the fold of our social and social benefits delivery programs. Now, all that is being done, but our own disaster recovery has not really expanded itself to include the social recovery. And this is the right time to do that. If you just look at our own history of recovery programs in the last 3 decades or so, the World Bank has been supporting most of the major recovery programs: Latur, Gujarat, Jammu Kashmir, Uttarakhand. And if you analyze some of these recovery programs, they focus predominantly on infrastructure. One major introduction was, of course, that of housing. That housing has become part of the recovery program. So if you bring the housing and infrastructure together, it's all about brick and mortar, but it has not really gone beyond the brick and mortar. And if you analyze some of these programs in terms of components and allocations, you would find that the allocation made for social sector, education, health, social protection, women's empowerment, water supply, nutrition, all these things have been very, very minuscule. So it's time to look at this lack of balance within the design of recovery program and include some of these components in a more prominent way. And this balance needs to be corrected, and this requires a certain shift in terms of policies and programming within the government. And I think the new setup window for recovery and reconstruction provides a very appropriate context for bringing this policy shift within the practice of recovery. So as we initiate this practice of recovery within India, independent of the World Bank programs, as we set it up within our disaster management system, there is a need to bring a stronger focus on social sectors and ensure that recovery is development oriented. It really enhances the living conditions of the people. And it's not just about restoration of the living conditions and housing and things like that. It's more than that. But what it requires is that we develop certain capacities within the system to undertake this shift. What are the capacities that are needed to accomplish this? One, of course, is assessment of damage and loss, that we need to have credible assessment of damage and loss. And when we do these assessments, we cover all the social sectors. Right now, again, our focus is largely on the infrastructure sectors, roads and bridges and telecommunications and power sector. Maybe to some extent we also assess the housing, but not many components of the social sectors. So we need to pay much greater attention to the assessments that happen right after the disaster. Assessments need to be followed up with recovery plans, and as we prepare the recovery plans, we also need to include all the social sectors, just because there is a tendency that, well, many of the assets which are damaged, they belong to the poor. They are not given enough attention within the programming. So that lack of attention needs to be addressed. So, and how best we can address that lack of attention? By making allocations, allocating resources. Unless we allocate resources, whatever we say, it does not really amount to much. So allocation needs to be made for social sectors, and whatever allocation we make, it should turn into programming. That we develop programs for various sectors, we identify interventions, and not just that, we also target those interventions at the segments of population which are most affected. I mean, to give you an example, say, if a certain community is affected in a particular area, and if we are rebuilding that community, and there is no school there, or there is no water supply system there, perhaps in the recovery, we need to look at the provision of some of these basic facilities. And if we say that there was no school, or there was no water supply scheme, there was no drainage, or there is no sewerage, and therefore we need not include that again in the recovery program. Maybe, we are not really being very fair to the people in terms of providing the recovery assistance. So what we are saying is this, that this process of planning, allocation, and programming should be used in a way that the recovery becomes more development oriented, and it's simply not guided by the considerations of restoring what existed before. What it also requires is that we involve the communities more actively. We ask them, we develop some mechanism of involving them, not just in the design of the program, but also in the implementation. So the people's participation, community participation becomes a very, very essential part of the social sector recovery. So I think when we start the actual process of the recovery planning, right from the assessment to the implementation and monitoring, I think we will provide enough attention to the to enhancing the living conditions, socioeconomic conditions of the people. Again, it requires that at the policy level, we emphasize some of the social aspects of recovery, that we also devise certain methods of monitoring them, say social audits, very, very important that all the recovery programs have include an element of social audit, so that we know that as a result of recovery, the people have really benefited in more ways than one. So we now have the policy context. We also have the funding window. What we need is to build the system right from the grassroots level to the national level, so that the practice of recovery is more deeply established. And within the practice of recovery, the social sectors are adequately recognized, and they are followed up with all the processes which range from the planning to the implementation to monitoring. And I think this is the right time to initiate that as this funding window is getting inaugurated. If we lay down a strong foundation, I think we will really be serving the country and the people better. in terms of providing recovery assistance in the right manner. So this is all that I would like to suggest. And again, I congratulate Professor Santosh Kumar for taking this initiative in organizing this webinar. It's happening at the right time and in the right context. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vatsa, for very, very insightful this remark of yours of the today's the beginning of the long-term recovery, where we say build back better beyond bricks and mortar. And you very clearly signified that we don't require just a restoration, but we want development. And development has to be kind of a process-oriented, and that process, like when we are creating housing or schools which we are creating, it should be supported by other facilities as well, like water, sanitation, connectivity, power, and so on and so forth. It should be a kind of a seen as a holistic program. Also, you mentioned about the paradigm shift about this 15th Finance Commission, which is saying that this might lead to India's own kind of a recovery process in the country. One is that it's heavily dominated by the World Bank and World Bank support, which is largely into infrastructure. But now we think and also that we should have our own recovery framework system where the social inclusion on the priority list. Third very important thing which you mentioned about that the social sector is the initiatives taken by the government of India in the recent past. How that to be connected with that, which you said about that Garib Kalyan Yojana, Swasthya Yojana, food security, entitlement and all, child care and other thing also you mentioned. This is very, very important shift which is happening. And you mentioned in the beginning of your this at the outset, food security and entitlement. So now entitlement is becoming as a kind of a social security, as an entitlement, as a part of the framework. It's very insightful, and you said that we need to develop capacity for that. And starting from the PDNA to taking it to the logical end for the long-term recovery. All these processes have to have the capacity building program, and that capacity has to be built from local level to the national level. I'm grateful indeed for your very, very valuable comments and appreciating the whole initiative. You have mentioned many things, but I've just picked up these points to reiterate for the other participants and also to the resource person so that they can connect what you have said and what kind of a thinking. And at the national level, government is open for all kinds of suggestions. And you mentioned that you want this, the proceedings of this, definitely we will be sharing with you. And thank you very much once again for being with us today. I know that you were very busy, you left that meeting, came here and addressed this. So I'm grateful indeed on behalf of NIDM, Major General Bindal, and on my own personal behalf. I extend my heartfelt thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
really,
you,
really great. Thank you.
Thank you. And there definitely I would be.
You are on mute.
If you are here and you can see one of the presentations, then you can always guide us, or you are like, it's depending on you how much time you can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Mihir, I welcome you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can you hear my voice?
Yeah. So I request Sanjay Swarastha to kindly make his intervention, and then we will go further. Sanjay Swarastha.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Santosh. Thank you for the kind invitation. And I'm so happy that I'm talking with Dr. Krishna Vatsa. He has been one of the most known face of promoting the social resilience in worldwide, particularly in the UN system. And Santosh, I want to tell you, he's one of the most respected greats in this area. When World Bank and many of the development banks, they were promoting the building back better worldwide, and its focus was more, on the bank principle of building infrastructure, brick and mortar, what you say, Professor Santosh. It was Dr. Krishna who the foundation of social resilience through the process, and the UN system always owes him for his valuable contribution to bring into focus all this PDNA architecture that UNDP, World Bank, and UN follow worldwide. The social part is into it. So thank you very much, and I'm very happy to speak with Dr. Massa. I have few slides. So I thought I will, if my colleagues can help me to show the slides, or if you release the uh, share point, I can present. This is the perspective from the. Can you show my slides, Cipra, or you allow me to share the content?
Sir, I am making you the panelist. If you are not able to share, then I'll share it from my side.
Okay, you can share because I'm not able to share this.
Okay, sir.
Right. So, Professor Santos and colleagues, what I have done is, what is happening elsewhere, particularly globally, on addressing some of the social resilience, which is, of course, the beyond bricks and mortars that you were talking about, and also some of the work we did, particularly on the long term, how disaster leads to intergenerational poverty or widens equality in the countries who were hit by many disasters in quick succession. So, as the escape yeah, thank you, Shipra. So, you just come to the next slide, Shipra, second one. ESCAP mandate is more on the, it's a part of Economic and Social Commission of the United Nations. So we focus mostly on economic and social issues. We look at, yes, Sipla, thank you. So colleagues, this is just to a spotlight on disaster impact. We have taken the PDNA of, particularly I have taken this for South Asian countries. The last PDNA, Kerala, of course, is not a part of it. I thought we have all that expert from India. So the impact of disasters on social sectors, and you will surprised to see that damage and loss assessments show that almost 43 to 38% of disaster impacts were on social and productive sectors. That includes education, health, housing, culture, and so on. You see this is because South Asia to some extent mirrors India. And when you see, for example, if I quote the example of many countries' PDNA, it also to some extent resembles with India's PDNA. So my next slide will show you what is the deeper impact of disaster impacting the social sector. Thank you, Sipra. This slide, I think I will purposefully like to bring to your attention to focus on how disaster turns people poor. We made this assessment with some of the major disasters with Asia Pacific experience in the past, starting from Pakistan floods to Philippines, Cyclone Haiyan. I think Dr. Krishna was part of many of the Philippines PDNA work. Then Cyclone Winston in Fiji, Sri Lanka, Vanuatu, so all countries of different economies, different size. What I want to highlight, you see the number of people who were affected, particularly those living on the margins, living between 1.9 to $3.10 a day. So those who were on the margins, they turned poor. And those poors, those who turned into the poverty, fell back into the poverty, 36% from Pakistan and so on. So this is a really very alarming situation. If somebody wants to talk on disaster impact on poverty, I think this is one of the very important analysis to bring this. So in Asia Pacific, 4 million people live in extreme poverty, under 1.9 per day, and 36% of the population be close to the poverty line, so less than 3.1. So you can see the people on the margins, the possibility of them turning into poverty. My next slide, Supra. This slide is yet another important for many of our colleagues are economists. So this is what we have done. We have run what they call global equilibrium model, which is quite popular in econometrics analysis. From ISCAP, we had 28 countries data on inequality. And we developed a model like multidimensional poverty, a multidimensional inequality. Inequality in terms of access to opportunity, inequality in terms of the income. So it's not only inequality in terms of economy, but also opportunity for health, education, and so on. And what is important to a spotlight is disaster avoidance equality. How? So we brought these numbers with a deep GCE analysis. 1% point increase in exposure to the climate events. It increases Gini coefficient by 0.24 percent point. So this is the measure of income inequality, Gini. Then come on the social side. On the social side, it increases under 5 mortality rate by 0.3 percent point. Then you come to the education point. Education point, you see the education dropout of the children, 0.26 percent point. So this is a very clear evidence how disaster not only widens income inequality, but also inequality of opportunity and well-beings like health and education. So my next slide, Supra, is on where our cities are located in Asia and Pacific regions. So we have done this work on mega cities, where exactly they are located. And you will be surprised to see the mega cities, many of them are located in an extreme disaster risk area. And 56% of the populations live with high to medium levels of inequality. So these results are similar for a smaller city as well. The point which I would like to make, you can do PDNA for very immediate impact assessment in the multiple sectors. But when you do a deep dive, you look at disaster impact in 10 years to 20 years. This is what is reflected in terms of breeding inequality. My next slide, Cipra, is going to show you what can be done. So this is, again, we use this CGE model simulation, disaster and no disaster. For example, if you see a country which has to manage the disaster risk to achieve 2030 agenda for sustainable development, which includes all SDG, Sendai framework, and so on. You see the disaster is one of the biggest constraints for the countries to achieve 2030 agenda for development. This is the diagram which shows, if I take the example, let us say in case of Pakistan. In case of Pakistan, if there is no disaster in Pakistan, means we assume in a modern situation, we assume if there is no disaster in Pakistan, they will be able to eliminate poverty by 100%. But just because there is a disaster in Pakistan and those disasters are unmitigated, the poverty level continues to be 53%. So this is a case in multiple countries. So if you really want to achieve 2030 agenda for sustainable development, disaster resilience is the key. The next slide, Shipra, is what could be done. I'm so happy that Dr. Krishna has already illustrated this in case of India. What I'm trying to bring to your attention is the example of 28 countries for which we have the absolute data sets. And in 28 countries of Asia and Pacific region, if there is no investment of any kind, you see 120 million people, mind it, this is before COVID results. If there is no investment, 120 people will continue to remain in poverty. If there are investment in infrastructure sector, the number comes down close to 100. Investment in education, it's around 80 million. Investment in health, further down. But investment in social protection, what Dr. Krishna was talking about in India context, and that is the Prime Minister Garib Kalyana Yojana and many of the social protections program which India is championing worldwide. So if you take social protection measures, the capacity, particularly the ability to reduce poverty, is much, much bigger. So if you take all these interventions together, you are going to build social resilience in a big way. And that is where you need a framework which Dr. Krishna spoke so well about it. My next slide, Tripura, is to tell you how will you break this nexus, the nexus between disaster, poverty, and inequality, so it can be broken. This has been unmitigated issue since generations. It can be mitigated if you have a right combination framework of health, agriculture, social protection, education, and infrastructure all together in a framework which Dr. Krishna was talking about in case of India after Finance Commission. This can be broken, this has been seen, and this will be the real, I think this will hold the key for a social resilience in the future. I think my next slide would be the, yes. So one of the transformative impact of all what I spoke to you, all interventions for social resilience, which what could be a transformative, a game changer is the emerging technologies, and especially after COVID, you see the world is going to be, I think, the fully technology driven. India today is world leader for digital financial services. It has exceeded US, China, and everywhere. So that shows the sign of emerging India's, particularly the muscle power in technology. And if all this technology put together, the social resilience in India context is not a dream far away. So I think this is my last slide, Supra. So thank you very much once again, Professor Santosh, for this opportunity. And it's a privilege to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjay. It's a very interesting, the study which you have shown, and especially I would like to highlight in the terms of the investment does not mean that it's leading to the high quality of resilience, but social protection is saying that paying off is much more than, and also that analogy which you mentioned about the transformative, the big data, digital identity, and then risk analysis and geospatial data. And these are the very, very important changing science can bring that transformation, what we are aiming in the beyond brick, and mortar. So जीवन में केवल ये पत्थर और ईंट जरूरी नहीं है, और इसका मर्म समझने के लिए भारतवर्ष में या फिर कई भी देशों में ये बहुत ही जरूरी है कि हम इसके ह्यूमन एंगल को समझें. डॉक्टर वत्सा ने भी कहा और आप भी इसको रीइंफोर्स कर रहे हैं कि जो इनइक्वलिटी, परसिस्टेंट इनइक्वलिटी के साथ साथ जो इनइक्वलिटी पैंडेमिक में हुआ, that is also a very, very challenging for everyone, for every country in the world. Now, when we talk about pandemic recovery supported with other disaster recovery, where that how we can bring in the social angle. And in this context also, the Canada has gone into different kind of a changes, what Sanjay you are telling and what Dr. Vatsa was telling. I wish to have a quick intervention from Mr. Hemant Kumar. And that can you, Hemant Kumar, you see that what Dr. Sanjay Swarastha is mentioning about the inequality and social protection that is leading to a kind of a change. And what Dr. Vatsa is emphasizing, that in the social protection and social angle, social inequality, accessibility, education is a very much important in terms of that if we are reimagining our framework for the Build Back Better. So what are the Canada's experience in the post-COVID? Couple of points which you would like to mention.
Sure. Thank you very much. And yeah, I really liked what you said, Dr. Swarastha. There were a couple of slides which really jived with our experience. One of them where you said about the social safety network. That is one area where probably the Canadian system differs quite a bit, is much more stronger. The safety net that we have in Canada across, it's from cradle to grave safety net for a human being. And that system has existed for 50 years, has been very well established. So it came so, it was such a pillar in Canada's COVID strategy that helped us mitigate a lot of the worst case scenarios, and also helped in resilience. For example, just having universal health care, where anybody can walk into a doctor's clinic and get treated, even, and that's made testing very quick, and early testing started like from day one, from the first day. Anybody who even thought that he had come in contact with a infected person could walk to a doctor and get tested. Actually, there were test labs established. So the health system for sure. And we have so many other services, family support services. We have services for seniors. We have services for disabled people. And we have workers' compensation, where if you get sick on work, and this was an exception that Canada made on workers' compensation, that it allowed COVID infection as a workplace injury. And you could claim compensation from the workers' compensation. So that definitely was a distinguishing factor, is a distinguishing factor between Canada and what I see in India or some other contexts, where the social safety network is just rock solid, and nobody or very few people still fall through the gaps, but most people get services that they need from the social services perspective and health perspective. The other part that you also mentioned is data. And again, probably most people might be aware that Canada's has one of the strongest data environments. Stats Canada is there for about 200 years, and it has some of the most robust, most comprehensive data collection scheme and mechanism anywhere in the world. And right on first anniversary, there were reports that you could access, which will tell you things like what was the average face-to-face contact for an elderly person in Canada with their family member. You could tell by any kind of data disaggregation, age, gender, race, geographic location, postal code, what the disease epidemiology looks like, and how many days of hospitalization, how many ICUs, etc., symptoms, side effects, morbidities, everything you could find out. And so a lot of the decision making that was going on, and of course we have lots of employment and jobs and business related data. So the policy making that happens in Canada is solidly evidence-based, and it's almost like real-time evidence. And also not just real-time, but reliable, because those data are not crowdfunded, crowdsourced data. They are actually targeted, scientifically collected data. So I'll stop there, but those are some of the two things that I felt like there were great similarities in what Mr. Swarastha said were sort of the pillars for resilience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hemant, for being with us. And if you wish to continue, that's very nice of you. And because it's late night, I'm not saying that you stay with us, but whatever if convenience is your way, if you are there, we can get back to you later. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
And also Dr. Sanjay Swarastha for bringing these issues on the forefront when we talk about social resilience and how that can be any investment. As Dr. Vatsa is always telling, this 15th Finance Commission is going to be the game changer. And he has emphasized on that how 15th Finance Commission recovery platform can be created in India. And that recovery system can be built with the focus of building social resilience. So thank you, both of you, Dr. Sanjay, and just stay with for the question answer. But we now go to Mr. Mihir Bhatt. Mihir Bhatt, and I would also like to know whether other two panelists have joined. from the World Bank and also from the Madras University. I'll just find out. But Mihir, what are your this intake in this? What you have listened to Dr. Vatsa and also listened to Sanjay Swarastha, an initiative in Canada for protecting social protection, and the scientific study which has been done by you and staff. Seeing India for long, and you have been engaged in this most of the recovery programs of the country. How you see this the social recovery or the when we talk about building back better beyond bricks and mortar, how the social angle can be strengthened and brought in. Mihir.
Thank you, Santoshji. This is a very important initiative that you have taken, and I couldn't be more happy. Shikrati, if you would upload my PowerPoint presentation,
Yes, sir.
just modified based on some of the discussions here. And also, Krishnaji very well lay out both what is changing in India in terms of social recovery and resilience is concerned, likely to change. But he's also, Sanjay ji gave us a kind of a regional picture about what are the other opportunities that we have. So we have a national picture and we have a regional picture. And then we get Canada, the northern picture. So what I thought I would cut out those parts of my presentation, and I have put together something which is very much kind of a local picture, if you will, that what happens to social recovery and resilience and how do you build that. And as Sanjay ji has a very good data that he has shared with us, I thought I will take case studies to give an example of that, so that you get both that what kind of figures we deal with when we deal with social recovery, but also what kind of case studies that we deal with. So next slide, please. So my presentation I put together in the following three sections, and one is context and cases. And the context addresses some of the things that Sanjay ji has mentioned, as well as Krishna ji has mentioned. And the cases are examples which, in a way, gives some sort of a qualitative material to what Sanjay ji gave us as an example of numbers across the region. So that's the first part A. Part B, and raising the challenges for and how those four challenges are also opportunities. So the Finance Commission can be game changer provided these challenges are turned into opportunities. And if we fail that, it will not be such a big game changer. That's what I want to suggest. And then if we want to make it a game changer, what should we do? And I'm suggesting the way ahead. So that's something that my presentation is about. We can go to the next slide, please. So in the context, I want to highlight two areas very clearly and very emphatically, and that is the increasing social losses and damage. And I wish I had access to loss and damage data of the national government and state governments as much as I would have liked to, or the assessments that are being done by various banks and UN agencies. I've had sporadic involvement from time to time, and from that I have put into some sort of a sequence over the past few years, past many years, and what I find that the disasters, either natural, climate-related, even conflict, but social losses and damages are increasing. And that's something, a fact, we can't go away with. Only thing somebody should do who has resources, we'd like to do that, is to say that how much of that increase, at what rate it is increasing, that we don't have. But definitely social losses and damages are increasing. So that's the one thing to keep in mind, that therefore the social recovery becomes even more important. And second is that the direct impact on social enabling environment that is various social policies that exist get affected by the disasters, climate change, conflict, these kind of shocks. The institutions or the structures, social and such as Testing Welfare Association in Delhi, for example, they get affected and they suffer loss and damage. And also individual leadership, the social, we'll go to the cases next. I'll tell you when we go to the next case, Shiprati. And they get very badly affected. So, enabling environment, institutions, and individuals. So basically, what we are talking about is this capacity building model that all three aspects of social uh, sector, social development, both sector development, both get affected. Thank you. May I request you for the next slide, please? I want to take 4 examples of that and show that in 2000 and from 2 different disasters. One is the Kutch earthquake, and second is to have the tsunami. And both have been a game changer, as we know that. And I'm taking the examples where a large social development organizations were involved and they suffered the loss due to the disasters, earthquake and tsunami. And tell you a bit more about these 4 cases to then go to the conclusion that I'm drawing. SETU was a series of was a network set up by EMVS, a very prominent and leading, effective Kutch Mahila Vikas Sansthan in Kutch. Sushma Iyengar is leading that. And she and a large number of other local NGOs and international NGOs doing agencies, but all of them set up this SETUs where the response to rebuilding after the Kutch was first and foremost coordinated, but more importantly, it also addressed the demand which was coming from the bottom up to an extent as it was possible. And what happened as a result of that whole effort of SETU that was being, that approach, that a whole new way of rebuilding came up, which is called owner-driven housing, shelter. There's a lot of material now available, thankfully. But till then, it was assumed that the delivery of shelter was to be done by those who are not affected, because those who are affected, they are affected. They can't do anything, they can't think anything, they can't mobilize anything, and therefore they are to be helped by taking over their agency into our hand, and we will do the housing. And that was proven wrong. And in Kutch, both in urban and rural areas, owner-driven shelter process that took place. There's a lot of material you could read up, and should you want, you can ask me. I'll be very happy to share. You can ask UNDP, which has a lot of material on owner-driven approach, and also Kutch Mahila Vikas Sansthan, which promoted SETU as the coordinating. And subsequently, that model has gone to a large number of other disasters in India. In fact, any disaster after that has tried to take this approach of SETU, including the Bihar floods, for example, Kashmir, Uttarakhand as well. This approach was in a changed form, but taken. That's a very important. So the point being that not only social losses are increasing and damages is increasing, and to the social organizations, but they actually offer a social way of doing recovery, which is different than entirely economic recovery to do that. So there is a dual role that social recovery and resilience plays. One is that it repairs the loss and damages, but it also comes up with something which is essential and needed in the social and economic sector overall to make the community area specific organization resilience. The second example is of the Self-Employed Women's Association, and it's the largest women's trade union in the country, maybe in the region. And after 2001 earthquake, they themselves were victim. More than 60,000 of their members, women who were working, were affected, and they didn't quite know what to do that. And so they went to the members, truly, and the social approach that, we go and listen to those who need what they need. And the women said that what we want is work and not so much relief in terms of water, food, shelter. We'll manage that with ourselves, our neighbors, with others, but make sure that our work continues. And that's the approach that they had taken, the livelihood approach. And as a result, not only those who were affected got their housing, roughly 60,000, and got their food, nutrition, schools. They had community learning centers. But actual membership of SEVA during those after those 3 years, doubled in terms of the number of people who were self-employed women they were able to access. So that's a large expansion of the organization itself. And the organization is not like any government or any corporate entity. It's a membership base. So those who were benefiting themselves benefited and brought in more people, more women to benefit themselves. So again, it's an example of social recovery and resilience, where not only you repair and replace the social loss and damage, but you actually create a social structure which has social value, which has social capital to use on. And that is something is very important, and not just replace loss of social social assets. The third example is consolidation of Swayam Shikshan Pranav. And it's a very interesting group which believes in reflective practice. That's also a women's group, a third example. And they've been doing since Latu disaster-related work and also development work. But after the tsunami, they become very proactive in making sure that that approach was taken to much larger number of organizations and especially women's community groups all across the coastal area. And in those 3 or 4 years' time, not only their method was taken up by the district authorities, but a large number of women themselves and their self-help groups take up what is called reflective practice of recovery. So social recovery and social resilience, if you want to not build it sort of from outside in, but let those who are affected reflect and build in a given time, in a given budget. Here is an example where the reflective practice, Swayam Shikshan, they were able to, and also Prayog, experimentation. A lot of social experimentations were done within that. Obvious ones being, finding the missing voice, but not so obvious ones. For example, at that time in 2004, promoting social enterprise. And that was something, not that easy at all during that time. And they have been able to do that successfully. And Prema Gopalan is the leader and has been leading this example. Please look up their work. It is really fantastic, very inspiring. The fourth example is Dan Foundation, Basimalai, very good friend. And they were hit with the tsunami and they didn't quite know what to do. Their members, not necessarily fisher, men, women, but still they were affected. And they took a strategic decision to focus on social recovery and resilience as a social organization to make sure that the entire coastal area of Tamil Nadu had their organizational presence in terms of various economic activities that they were doing, including the self-help groups that they were doing. And during the recovery period, they made sure that social recovery and social resilience was built. And as a result, the economic recovery and economic resilience was built across communities which were new to Khan Foundation, but not anymore. And they were able to invite the approach and the methodology and values that the foundation was propagating through that. So these are the 4 examples I'd like to highlight. There are many, many more in India, luckily. But these 4 I've taken because they are somewhat known and also they are somewhat telling us the way ahead, if we are thinking about the way ahead. That social recovery and resilience not only is about uh, 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 making sure that the loss and damage are covered, compensated, but actually a whole new transformation that takes place. Next slide, please. So two challenges I would like to overall say about from this social recovery and resilience, and I'm again drawing from the same sources. One is that the awareness about social recovery and resilience is very thin, is and it is event oriented. So the social recovery comes into picture when there is an event such as flood, and then there is economic recovery, assessment. Social assessment is brought into, money is spent on economic recovery, and then also on the social sector and social sector. But the awareness about that throughout the cycle of disaster risk reduction or the humanitarian cycle is not quite there. So that's an important area where anybody from as big as World Bank to as small as a district authority, district without planning authority, that you have to be aware of the social recovery and resilience part. So if I was a district disaster management authority head, I would list the social capital that exists in my district, a school, a hospital, maybe any other social enterprise, and see that their recovery and resilience is part of the recovery that I'm planning. The second challenge, and therefore there is an opportunity, is investments in social recovery and resilience are low. That is, if you need, say, 100 rupees for a specific task of social recovery, generally 10, 15, 20 rupees are put in. So very often social recovery doesn't succeed. They are low. They are scattered. That is, you put in this money in social recovery and somebody should do more thorough analysis. But this is the observations that I had, that you put in social recovery related money for school construction, but not in the curriculum review, or not to the outreach, and as a result, to have good school buildings, but not necessarily very good improvement in education. Here, I'd like to give you an example from Tamil Nadu, where there was a school being built, and they decided that they would have a very big section on computer-related training. This is after tsunami. And as I always do, after 10 years, I decided to visit the same families and therefore same villages and same institutions there. And I was so happy to see that the school was doing very well, but also the computer classes were doing well. They were really taken up because it was a new thing and everybody wanted to do that. School was for the girls. So the girls who graduated from the school had gone to study computer sciences in other colleges. And I actually met a couple of them who were staying. These are the fisherwomen, their daughters. They were staying in Bangalore as a computer scientist, as a paying guest. Leaving your family, leaving your own economic activity, your coastal area, your home, your community. They had come into their own. And that was a major social transformation example that went on. Next, please.
Mayor, can you be little?
Yeah, these are the last two examples, and then I'm finishing. One is, again, challenges as opportunity, and I would like to conclude that governance of social recovery and resilience is focused on economic and quantitative measures, which are very important, but they often leave out the social inclusion, social justice, and social equity concerns. And that's something that needs to be picked up. And the second challenge, and therefore the opportunity, is that anticipation of social recovery and resilience is almost non-existent. And we don't anticipate that. And except now in the displacement-related work and migration-related work, and that's the area where far more fundamental work is needed. Thank you. Next, please. And I would suggest the way ahead for this particular program, but with NIDM especially, that there must be some discussion, brainstorming, sharing of ideas, imagination, creativity for social recovery and resilience to reimagine that and go social media approach to a lot of other things that could be done. So that's something maybe an NIDM can do. That's how do you reimagine social recovery? The second part is the scoping of social recovery and resilience opportunity. And again, go beyond sort of with the digitalization approach and applications, apps, which are obviously very important and must be done. But we can go beyond that, and that's something which needs far more work. And third is develop a long-term program for social recovery and resilience building, which is transformative. And I gave some examples that how do you transform the social capital, which includes social enabling environment, social institutions, as well as social leadership, so that it's a transformation part. So this is what I would like to suggest as a way ahead. I'd like to stop here and thank again NIDM, and I thank my two here, all the three previous speakers, including Krishna ji and Sanjay ji and Hemant Bhai. If you have any questions, you can ask me now, or you can send me email via NIDM. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mihir, for bringing all those points, and especially the 4 case studies like Setu, Seva, and Dhan Foundation and SSP as a kind of a social recovery. And a couple of points which you mentioned about this, the transformative. And you are saying this develop a long-term strategy. Transformative, Sanjay is also talking about, and transformative, Dr. Vatsa also spoke about. Now, the question is that when we talk about transformative for social, building social resilience, and when we look life into the reconstruction and recovery, then we start looking at those issues which are very, very important. And we say that we have least capacity to address all those issues. And it's very challenging that you have brought that success stories and see that how World Bank is actually looking into these matters when it comes to the funding recovery. And I personally was involved also in 4 recoveries program of the World Bank when I was working there. And so, so those experiences are also there. But now that a lot of water have flown from that time to now. And as we see that Dr. Sumita Chopra is there, and I welcome you, Dr. Sumita, for being with us. And I request you to kindly just give your insights of the bank, then your personal insight also, when we are talking about beyond the bricks and mortars. I was looking at the Economist this week, and they're talking about build back best in the Mexican context and the Latin American context. And now we are talking about build back better. And somebody yesterday in the Building Financial Resilience UNESCAP said that building forward broader. And so many connotations are coming. And we want as a central stage is the people. So how do you see that? Over to you.
Good afternoon, Professor Santosh Kumar, and good afternoon to all the panelists and all the attendees as well. Just to set matters straight, I'm Mrs. Sumita Chopra, not Dr. Sumita Chopra.
Okay. Thank you.
So the take of the World Bank and how we've been working with the government and the central government and the various state governments, very similar to what the other panelists have been mentioning. It needs to be long-term. It needs to be resilient. It needs to be adaptive. It needs to create an awareness at the ground level and upwards. It has to go beyond just simple digitization or digitalization, whichever way. So some of the building blocks that we have been working with have been in the area of working, when we talk of working in the area of social protection and COVID recovery, to be specific, is to ensure that the systems that we build are adaptive, which is to say that they are resilient, they are flexible, they are quick to respond to situations, because I mean COVID is, I think, one of the very few and the first examples of how quick we need to respond to situations, how unexpected they are. Am I audible? So how can we support excluded groups much more easily? How can they be identified first of all? And how how much more can portable platforms be of use to a country like India, where one of the excluded groups sort of is migrant workers, interstate, intrastate. Migration is one of the biggest realities today. It is happening, it will continue happening, but how can we support them the most? And then the biggest group of excluded workers, the informal group workers, how can they be brought into the ambit of social protection in a more sustainable, in a more adaptive manner, which gives them not just a support system, but a sustained support system, which these groups can come out of eventually poverty is where we need to. And while it is good to have it all working from the central level, but in a country like India, which is vast differences in geography, ways, the manner of implementation, the attitudes, the kind of population one needs to work with, a lot more work needs to be done at the state level. And very fortunately, a number of states have realized that. At least we are, the World Bank is working with at least 8 states now in the field of social protection to ensure that uh, these kind of excluded groups and even those who are included get a better visibility. They are better serviced through the social protection schemes that we are in. So 4 pillars we feel are something very important to ensure this: the registration, identification, disbursement, and monitoring. Now, registration and identification, a lot of times we are using those interchangeably, but these are two very specific things, and a lot of states have now understood that it is so important to build these systems to ensure that these systems, the social protection systems that they have, are able to respond much more quickly in terms of disaster, in terms of any unexpected events like the pandemic have created. So that's one area. The disbursement has been, the DBT machine is one excellent work that has been happening for the disbursement. But at the ground level, much more support, much more capacity building needs to be done. And I guess NIDM is so ideally placed to bring together all those elements at the ground level, um, which can work so much more cohesively in such kind of instances. And just now, Professor Santosh Kumar, you mentioned a word, I think, empathy. Um, Now, this empathy is something that I guess we need to build into the DNA of all the ground level workers, all upwards to wherever the policies are being built. And the last bit, which is so very misunderstood or misconstrued many a times, monitoring. So monitoring need not mean only to monitor how something is being done and to make punitive assessments of it, but monitoring can be much more positive in the manner to ensure that monitoring that whether the workers and the population which is being helped through those schemes, are they progressing from there? And I think Mihir Bhatt also mentioned this thing is that he went back and looked at the scheme which had been implemented in education and saw the benefits of it to people. But this kind of aspect needs to be built into most of the programs wherever possible to for a kind of a longitudinal study which goes on over time to ensure and see what are the benefits being actually accrue to those people who they are meant for, and how that is the one place where we will eventually be able to learn and understand how to implement these schemes better, how to formulate these schemes better, and to ensure that they're reaching the right people in the right time. So at the World Bank, we have been working not just in India but with other countries as well to build these adaptive social protection programs, learn and relearn and reformulate from what is being done, what has been done. not just in case of an emergency, but to ensure that a sustainable support system can be built up, which is another extremely important aspect of social protection. It needs to be sustainable, it needs to be long term, should be and ensure that it is enough to bring them out of poverty. This will need a lot of dissemination and education, not just of the policymakers, but the ground level workers, of the population itself, of the beneficiary groups who are who can avail of these opportunities. A lot of times you realize that the programs are implemented, but the take up is not there because there are misconceptions, there is no understanding. So again, this was mentioned by other speakers, esteemed speakers before me, is that this dissemination and education and awareness creation is something which is extremely important to close the cycle of social protection, I would say. And we feel that it is not necessary to create new systems for that. We have a lot of existing infrastructure. We have a lot of existing processes in place. We have a lot of existing organizations in place who can be built up to make sure that this kind of information reaches. For instance, your health health workers who are already there, the self-help groups which are already there, that multitasking and bringing a cohesiveness and then by making them aware of other areas, not just that one single pointed focus. So maybe building a group which can give a more holistic help support to the ground, because they are the ones who are in first contact with the beneficiaries, with the people. And COVID has brought about another very important group, people who are just above what we call the beneficiaries, but who have fallen down tremendously into poverty because of COVID. And a lot of help is being given, but are we even aware of who these people are? Are these people aware of what schemes are available to them? Now, so these are some questions that, as you know, as a nation, we need to address, as policymakers need to address, as people who are bringing these such similar points up to the forums, we need to address and see how can these be formed. And I think I personally feel that the more we bring out these questions, more we deliberate on them, only then will we come out with some concrete responses, solutions for them. And that needs to be the attitude to build solutions, not just bring up the questions, not just bring up the anomalies in the system, but to bring out some solutions to these through deliberations, through interactions, etc. So I think that is all that I have. I apologize. I don't have too much of data right now today because.
No, thank you very much. It's not necessarily that you speak out of data, but data is important, but not that important. The ideas is much more important. And thank you very much for, you mentioned about sustainability. And you also mentioned about this adaptive social network and social work kind of thing. And the bank is into many engagement in the many of the Indian recovery process in the past as well as ongoing. I will have one question before I go to the next speaker, and one question in terms of that how capacity building, you also mentioned capacity building. Dr. Vatsa also mentioned capacity building. Dr. Sanjay also mentioned capacity building for recovery. So when we talk about, even Mihir Bhatt also talked about capacity building. So these capacity building in social protection and transformation, because I see that in most of the recovery program, we go for a transition as a kind of an intermediate shelter. And there we find we do not have any facilities, that good facilities. When we talk about sanitation, we talk about water, we talk about health. So that is also gets missed out. When we plan for transition shelter and also in this, how that also can get integrated in the system of recovery. And also when we talk about that, bringing capacity, you mentioned about an NIDM, but how an NIDM and what kind of a support which can be rendered by the World Bank?
So, as well, part of most of our projects, our emphasis is on building capacity at various levels, and that is something we try to ensure happening. Now, what progressively that we are doing and largely we're doing now is using our technology to build systems or to build, using technology to bring in a more in interactive manner to workers, to people, so that you can not only give them information, but also ensure that they are coming back with their feedback about the program, about how it is being implemented, what they are learning, etc. So that is one aspect of capacity building. The second is increasingly um, we need to bring it to the fold more and more organizations, be a little more tolerant, build systems which can integrate these existing existing organizations like the self-help groups, etc., into the system and ensure that they are being made use of. And this is happening more and more in the programs. So when you also talk of the transitioning and cohesiveness at the ground level, so now our programs are, um, you know, I think for a very long time, even at the World Bank, we were existing in silos. Each section or each department was sort of working on their own. But now more and more we are devising programs which encompass different areas, whether it is environment, whether it is sanitation, water, agriculture, social protection. So a case in point is Kerala, Resilient Kerala program, where all these systems have come together to ensure that one area which is selected for the program is getting the best benefit of all the programs together. The program has been built in a manner that everyone works off to each other. The entire program is more cohesive, it is more um, built together to see the maximum benefits that can reach the beneficiary in that one area and ensure that this is then scalable to other areas by proving it. So that is one of the methods that we are trying. There are numerous others which are being tried, and discussions, I guess, yes, lead to these things. Feedback, continuous feedback, longitudinal studies. These could be some methods of.
I will also get back to you maybe after listening to one person more, and I would request you to kindly stay back because I have a very specific question to the bank.
Sure.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and also the bank's actions, what they are taking, and how the cohesiveness have been brought in the bank, which is needed not at only at the grassroots, but also at the bank level. So that is very, very important and candid confession. We can say that this is very, very important for the betterment of the society. Everything we have to introspect. Now we see that many a times we have been seeing, and World Bank is very concerned, and we are also concerned. Gender is a very, very important concern when we talk about when disaster happens. That largely informal sector, in the social sector, we saw women work in the very, very kind of informal sector, largely in the 70 to 80% of that. So how that is the gender concern, couple of points which we wish to listen from our gender experts, psychosocial care and all, that is a pandemic has brought this issue, flagged this issue of trauma. And we see that how trauma, gender and the children issues can also be brought in the social framework. When we talk about what Dr. Utsav was telling, this is a time that we can build a resilient system for the capacity for this recovery program. So, Dr. Shubhashri, if you are there, can you intervene and give your reflections on these two issues? On the one, that how the trauma can be addressed in the framework, and the gender issues. Are you there, Dr. Subhashri?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Please. So I would want your quick intervention on that.
Yes, sure. I'm really thankful to Professor Sandesh Kumar for considering on this topic. And I'm Dr. Subhashri from Madras School of Social Work. I'm heading the psychology department. Due to technical difficulty, I'm not able to share my slides, or I'm not able to present my video also. So we all know, we have discussed, there are eminent speakers who spoke about the entire aspects of disaster resilience and as well as building back better. And building back better, building back stronger and faster. More than that, I feel building back more inclusive with respect to gender is very important, I think. We know that the kind of a challenges when it comes to gender, it is actually not, it is not any disaster in that case. Natural disasters is not neutral, gender neutral. So it affect the women and men and girls and boys in a very different way, maybe because of gender inequalities. It has been present in our society, socio-economic conditions, cultural beliefs, and when you call it traditional practices also. So I feel that the very important aspect, the differences of the female, how the vulnerability of this particular population need to be considered while we are planning for any kind of an reconstruction measures. I think we need to really include them into the entire process for considering, because the need for the male and the female when it comes to the disaster recovery phase, it's totally a different one. So right from the resilience building activities, so it is totally and the safety, security measures and everything. So gender approach in disaster risk reduction has to be a very specific, it has to be it has to be in from the policy level. It has to integrated in the policy level, and gender sensitive risk assessment has to be taken care. And I think the equality measures, involving men and women into the practices of anything you call it in the reconstruction process is required. And for that we require gender analysts, because we should have an analysis of how many girl children, how many, because safety, security and everything we are measuring, especially with related to the sexual abuse or the violence or domestic violence, when it comes to the safety of the no the sexual harassment. All these, if you really looked into the victims, are really unsafe in these situations when it comes to disaster, post disaster. So I feel that that has to be really considered, and there should be an equal opportunity when it comes to, you talk about the food, or you talk about the safety, you talk about anything in that case of the resilience building. It has to be definitely taken care with the equal opportunity when it comes to education, when it comes to, but it is the disparity is there already in the society, which need to be really taken care at least during this disaster, post disaster. That is the one important aspect we would like to mention. And also I feel that empowering rural women and empowering the along with the children about the risk disaster, reducing the risk disaster has to be taken care. And one of the studies, one of the report I have seen then in the UNDRR, they say that the gender perspective working together in disaster risk reduction is important. Women should also have an equal opportunity to work. And when it comes to gender inclusive disaster risk management, empowering women with the key strengthening how disaster resilience is important in community building, they should be taken care with the respective of their own perspective. So for example, simple thing, the opportunities, equal opportunities, and also the ability to do. When tsunami hit, there were more women were being actually wherein the death rate of women were very high. The only factor was being actually identified, the swimming capability of women are less than the men. So there are so many things we need to really consider when it comes to this disparity. And especially during this Chennai floods, I would like to mention the needs of the women were totally different from the men. There were an app, and there were networks working for sanitary napkins. So if you really see that from the aspect of the women, right from the safety, security, their reproductive health, and as well as their pregnancy, their childbirth, child rearing, and security when it comes to the other aspects, and right from the privacy in taking bath, that all these has to be really considered very specifically when it comes to the the gender aspect. The gender responsive approach to the disaster risk reduction has to be taken care, which is very much required. And I think World Bank has worked in a detailed way for when it comes to this gender aspects. And I have also gone through the report. It is really, they talk about the the standard operating procedure for gender based and gender equality based and gender inclusive based, also ecosocial support. And I think that would be an better model also we can follow when it comes to disaster. This is a quick review I would like to, because I have a meeting also. Thank you, Professor Sandoz, for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much for wonderful points which you have raised, and concerns on vulnerabilities is one, but you have talked about the leadership, you talked about violence which has emerged in the post-COVID area, and also post-disaster scenario, empowerment as an issue of in the recovery program, the gender perspective and ability to do that. Again, it comes to the capacity development. So thank you very much for being with us and sharing your thoughts. I will go back to now Dr. Sanjay. Dr. Sanjay, are you there? A couple of questions which participants have also said. I have tried to simulate those questions, and I have collated, and question is coming, the technology is there, and you are also emphasizing technology. How the technology in the context of when we are building a long-term recovery with a social system for bringing beyond bricks and mortar, how do you see and propose a system can, the beginning of that building that system can be started based on the technology so that we can design a good recovery program in the country. Say the state government can take the facilities of that. So creating a facilities of recovery or recovery platform where the social protection is one of the keys. Sanjay. Dr. Sanjay, are you there? If Dr. Sanjay is not there, let me have this question same to what with Mr. Chopra from the bank. You said that capacity building has to be started, and how a bank thinks is a proactive without waiting for the disaster to happen and start building that process in the country so that if any recovery program has to be designed be the national level or the state level, how that system can be evolved at this point of time in the country where the social inclusion can be brought in the main perspective.
So technology, like you said, is there. There is a lot of technology available, but it can only be a starting point. It can only be an enabler. Beyond that, a lot of effort needs to go in from various sides to ensure that this technology and the results that technology provides are made to use in the proper manner, for which we need to understand how to use technology. So I come from a technology background, and what I have seen over time is it is only when people with the right mindset, attitude come together, both technology and policy side come together, work cohesively. That is when you can make the best use of that technology to build a system which is responsive, which is adaptive, which is flexible, and which provides what is needed. I mean, at times we go overboard, do a lot with technology, try to do a lot, but is it giving what is needed by the beneficiary group that we are addressing? That is, I think, one of the key questions that any of the program needs to look at initially. Is it giving what is needed? Is it giving where it is needed? Is it giving what, when is it needed? When it is needed? All those are important. Then, as you said, building for the future, building better for the future is important. For that, we need to be continuously working, understanding what is happening. How can it be improved? So, for instance, like I mentioned, that there are a lot of left out groups. There are a lot of, and this we have seen during the pandemic. Every agency which has been trying to help, which has been trying to support people who have been who have been hurt the most by the pandemic, has found that there are huge groups, huge pockets of people who have been left out. How do we work around that? How do we find those people? Is where registries work. Registries are not just databases. You know, we work with databases, but it cannot be, it has to go beyond databases into systems. And for that, it is very difficult, again, as I mentioned earlier also, that at the central level, as the country as a whole working at the same time, it may not be so feasible all the time. But at least 6 states have already begun, and 2 or 3 more that I know of are working on creating registries of people, finding out these left out groups, maybe through surveys, maybe through other means. There are a lot of databases that we have. We have a lot of information. There are ground level people who can provide the agencies at the ground level who can provide information. So putting them together, understanding them, analyzing this data, analyzing the work that we are already doing, the social welfare programs that are happening, the social protection programs that are, the health and social program. It is so important to have all this information available. So, and then someone see it in a holistic manner. So for it to be there needs to be a cohesion even in the data collection. There needs to be a cohesion on how it is presented and how it is analyzed. Looking at that analytics from the perspective of what we are trying to do. So having that question very clear is, what are you trying to do? Who are you trying to do for? These two questions need to be paramount at the time of analyzing this. I think that is how solutions will come up. There is I can't see any single formula.
Thank you. Mihir Bhatt, you have presented 4 case studies for bringing those into, and what World Bank is saying is a kind of that we are doing many things already. Government of India is also doing many things, and also you have presented the 4 case studies from different disaster scenario, like starting from Kutch earthquake to tsunami, and then tsunami to carry forward to Jammu Kashmir, and so on and so forth. But the point is this: now when we trying to understand that whole recovery system, where we see that infrastructure is largely takes over in terms of when it comes to the long-term recovery, where we need to bring that infrastructure is also for the people. So the idea is to how to people bring into the forefront, and for that we wish to bring the system in place. So whatever the experiences which we have, how to join the dots and make a kind of a system where everybody can think and then can engage in capacity development, facilitating the state government, facilitating the recovery process. And Dr. Vatsa said that 15 Finance Commission has brought a lot of scope for going for a proactive recovery. So Mihir, what is your suggestion? You have given way forward also, but I need to understand a little more so that other gets benefit. The question is coming like that, the other than technology, other than social media, many things, and Madam also said that, Sri said that vulnerabilities, women issues, gender sensitive recovery. So what is your take, Mihir? Mihir, are you there? I hope you are listening to us, Mihir.
Yes,
Yeah. So can you answer? Have you heard the question which I have raised? I have raised that the many of the initiatives are being taken. You have discussed 4 case studies, and also the World Bank is working in different states, and that some capacity has been created in those states, have been created in different states. How to join the dots and kind of build a system for inclusive recovery. We are saying that inclusive recovery where social things are addressed.
Yeah. No, so in fact, if I can link this question with the question you asked to Sumita ji about the way ahead, I think we need a framework for social recovery and resilience as a country, and we don't have that clearly demanded. There are elements of that, and there is very good work across the sort of building blocks that the bank does, ADB does. There is, of course, UN has some good parts as well, but there isn't the framework that we have, and that would be good to have, which will include, for example, the duration, 2030, if that's something we are planning for, that the scope and purpose of social uh, recovery, recovery and resilience, because it's a huge area. So what is it that we are going to cover, and to what extent? What are the outcomes that we are expecting, both social but also economic outcomes? Because in the end, the job of all of us is to reduce vulnerability and poverty, both simultaneously, and then set some sort of goals and targets within this framework, which will include the range of things that we bring in within the scope and purpose. And then some priority actions from these 8 or 9 states. So if we take this experience from 8 or 9 states where the bank in this particular case or whoever else is working, and quickly review that, what is it that this experience is telling us about the framework for social recovery and resilience, at least for India programs, if not at a regional level, but perhaps ASCAP would also help do it at a regional level as well. And then also some guiding principles will be needed in terms of social justice, social inclusion, social rights, which are both human rights as well as the rights related to work, and some of the overarching concerns, such as Vanmani, you mentioned the basic income, which at least three of the speakers have mentioned social protection, and not only that be there during development period, but a reinforced social protection, which will further support the individual and the family during a disaster, before, during, and after. So kind of, that kind of social protection we have. So that's immediate thoughts which come to my mind, Santosh.
Thank you very much, Mihir, for pointing out that. Sanjay, are you there? Sanjay Swarastha. I wish to take your point as well, because you have given a kind of a framework. And Mihir Bhatt is saying that we need to have a framework in the context of the joining the dots. The World Bank is also suggesting that we need to take those experiences and bring on the forefront, and capacity building systems should be started. My last question to both of you, probably Sanjay is not able to listen to me, but he is there. Just to both of you as a last point of yours, in terms of from here, you have given me here way forward. So from here, what would be the starting point, the discussion which we had for 2 hours, long 2 hours today on building social inclusion. So I would need to understand that what could be the possible point of action which you suggest that should be taken from here, from this webinar to the action?
I think one would be obviously, which I'm sure you are doing with Shipra, but sort of quickly capture some of the key ideas and key principles that have come up with that. Not a whole big report, which you may or may not do, of course, that would be useful. But that would be a first step. And second, set up either one large or maybe 3 or 4 across the country, some part consultation, part sharing of what kind of social framework that we need in terms of social recovery and resilience, so that there is an overall, not complete consensus, but a broad consensus about the direction and pace and the kind of issue that we are taking. Gender, for example, of course, exclusion of Dalits and others, which is of a great concern to all of us. Migrant labor that the bank talked about, and the informal sector workers that Sanjay had also pointed out. So that would be the second sort of set of actions that we can take. And then from that, develop a framework, which is for social recovery and resilience during disaster or conflict, or both of them combined. So that would be a good outcome in next 6, 7, 8 months. That's my sense what is happening. And luckily, you have the already ongoing links with ASCAP, with the bank. You have the Madras school, for example. Of course, our experience is available to you. and your own NIDM as the pillar of both the national as well as a series of state level institutes have, and they can bring in series of case studies related to social recovery and resilience. So it becomes a good. So once we have the framework, then immediately we can start developing project outlines and the programming.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mihir. Sumita ji, what is your take on that, how we should go ahead from here to webinar to action?
I agree with Mr. Bhatt, what he said, that the first important thing is to collate from the field what has been the experience and what has been the outcomes based on the support that people have received. Are there still a lot of groups which are not receiving any support? Are there any still workers who are or people, beneficiaries who need who need more support in what areas? So like I said, the two questions: what is still needed right now? What is needed in the long term? I think these questions, if we start addressing, we should be able to build programs around that. We should be able to reconfigure programs around that. Just like PMGKY was done, as a response, an immediate response by building up existing programs and using the same existing infrastructure. I think that is what we need to do in the long term also. Keep on calibrating and recalibrating what we have, improving that to address what are the questions. So we need to work all out and find what are the questions. I think that is most important, to find the questions.
Thank you very much. You also endorse the point what Mr. Bhatt has said. In that we need to understand that and collate those information, what has been there and how we can go. And the moot question which we need to ask is to what we need and what we want to move ahead from here to. So we always say that, I don't know whether, Dr. Subhashri, are you there for your last comment? Dr. Subhashri?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Okay. Yeah, your last comment from the deliberations for webinar to action.
So for the action, as such, it has to be a gender-specific approach. For that, we need to really focus and budget all the programs with specific measures relating to that. And I think capacity building, empowering women, empowering children, and also making them understand, right from the risk management and as well as safety, security, and all these aspects, they need to be psychoeducated. And primarily, I feel that the psychological first aid and psychosocial prevention measures has to reach everyone also to empower them. One of the component would be taught about that. As a psychologist, I would like to recommend that also, because resilience as a component, if you really look in from other aspects, the psychological capital is also very important for the person to bounce back. That would be my final.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So a lot of things have come up. So I would like to thank all the speakers, distinguished delegates. I missed Sanjay Swarastha, the last point. I don't know whether he is still listening to us or not, but we will request him to send his final point for the moving ahead from here. The conclusively 3-4 points which I would like to mention what Dr. Vatsa. One, that we know that this Finance Commission has given a window of opportunities for drafting such kind of engagement for a long-term recovery framework. So the priority is this, that framework is to be decided and drafted and should be made inclusive. So that framework, how we go at the process of framework, that is another action point. Second very important point has come up in terms of that how India is also, other than the bank also, that will have opportunity of developing some recovery framework. So experiences of the bank and also experiences of other agencies like UN and other agencies, ADB and all, they have worked. So how that social issues can be brought in the framework of understand in the long-term recovery. The third is very important is in terms of the entire focus for building or inclusiveness in terms of bricks and mortars. Beyond that is moving out of any investment in recovery should lead to vulnerability to resilience. So that is the major concern is coming as is a social in how we are going to from vulnerability to resilience. And the time frame which we have given, the panelists have suggested to 6 to 8 months to start looking at into the draft position. And the trauma and other things, the subject we will be discussing, whatever the subject which have been highlighted today, and into a kind of actionable points. Another is that given as that PM 10-point agenda is also emphasizing on that, and how that PM 10-point agenda and Sendai framework can very well captured in our framework. And many of the initiatives have been taken in the post-pandemic recovery program of India and also elsewhere, like Canada example has come up, like a health facility is free to everyone. So there is no bar. Anybody can go to any place. This is one of the example. And here also in India, we are talking about Swasthya Yojana, food security, direct benefit, how that can be clubbed with the recovery framework, which we are talking about. And then another is that how policy, public policy can also be thought of in this context, that public policy is very, very important to support our in this, and that Dr. Watts also said that food security and entitlement, can this also be thought of as an entitlement issue in the context of recovery framework. And in the context of disaster, climate change, we see that drought and other disasters are happening along with the pandemic. So how that would create a system for long term of inclusion of the social issues and also that economic issues which we discussed yesterday. So social issues are to be brought in the center stage in the all recovery platform. And last but not the least, that without capacity development, we will not be able to achieve much more what we are anticipating today. So the agencies that you suggested at national level, state level, and the local level have to be brought in. It's not necessarily with the government only, but it is also spread over, and that capacity building strategies has also to be developed in the whole front of this kind of endeavor. So with these kind of conclusive remarks, and we said that webinar to action. So we do webinar to action yesterday, say that, and webinar to action today also we are talking about. So we take that abbreviation WA. So let the WA be as a kind of a fulfilled dream, not as a kind of an unfulfilled dream. So India needs that, and in the context we say that compassion and love is the basic thread of humanitarian intervention for disaster risk management. And let it, this compassion and love should part and parcel when we talk about social inclusion and social protection be the thread as a kind of a basic principle of that. So thank you very much, Mihir Bhai. I thank you, Sumita ji. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay Swarastha, and Dr. Watts ji, and Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal. And also we have Subhashri ji to thank you for your kind intervention and time. I'm grateful to all the organizations. Sanjay, I missed your last comment and I was missing, and now I see your face here. So,
No problem.
But anyway, I have concluded, but if you still,
No problem.
if you have to say anything, you can say right now as a last word from your side, the UNESCAP support to this endeavor.
Yeah, thank you. Professor, you have already spoken. I'm sorry I had to attend one phone call from, from my office, but you have already concluded, and from UNESCAP side, if you may recall, we brought out one rapid assessment for recovery, and we advocated the use of all analytics for a very quick recovery. Now the analytics has gone from satellite to drone to all, from a satellite platform to a mobile platform. So the best thing for PDMA is to capitalize on newer technology, the emerging technology, and that could be the work which we can take it up together with NIDM in days to come.
Professor Santosh.
Thank you very much for commitment of UNESCAP from Sanjay, and World Bank. We have already taken support, and we will have a bilateral discussion also separately that how we can go ahead from there. I'm indeed grateful to all of you for making this a very, very enriched discussion, and a lot of points and insights came. And so we see that new directions which are coming for the country, which country is needing very much, because we as in the beginning, we said that we are into total social kind of a heterogeneity, and different parts of the country had different culture. And that has to be knitted together for bringing the benefits of long-term recovery investments. So thank you once again to the World Bank, and also to AIDMI, NIDM, and also UNESCAP for my heartfelt thanks. And I convey my heartfelt thanks to NDMA, and of course our Executive Director, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal. And the formal vote of thanks would be done by Dr. Ms. Shipra. And Shipra, our Prabhajot is there. They are the young professionals. They have learned a lot from your deliberations. And so they will be doing. And Dr. Radha is not here. She was coordinating, and she has to meet a medical emergency. So she is not there. So on behalf of her also, I convey my heartfelt thanks to all of you. And Prabhajot, over to you for formal vote of thanks to everyone.
Thank you, Professor Santosh Kumar sir. Now I present the vote of thanks. I wish to present the vote of thanks for this webinar on behalf of NIDM. I like to take this opportunity to place in record a hearty thanks to the patron of this webinar, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal sir, Executive Director of National Institute of Disaster Management, for his support and guidance for the program. I would also like to thank Dr. Krishna Vatsa, member of NDMA, for joining us today. I like to thank the convener of this program, Professor Santosh Kumar, who is the head of DRR and GIDRR division, NIDM, for continuous motivation and support for this program. I would thank all the respected resource persons of this webinar. First, I would like to thank Dr. Sanjay Swarastha, Chief DRR Asia, West Asia, UNESCAP, Shri Mir Bhatt, Founder Director, All India Disaster Mitigation Institute, Ms. Sushmita Chopra, Social Protection Specialist, World Bank, Dr. Hemant Kumar, President and Principal Consultant, Engage First Management Consultant, Canada, Dr. Subhashri, Assistant Professor and HOD, Department of Psychology, MSSW, for finding time from their busy schedule and give their insights on this very important topic. I also wish to thank all the participants who are connected with us from different parts of the country. I wish to thank all the representatives of state and central governments who managed to take out their precious time from for this program. With this words, I like to bring end of this webinar on Build Back Better Beyond Bricks and Mortars, webinar 2, Building Social Recovery and Resilience. Thank you very much.
I also express my gratitude to everyone and all the distinguished participants who have joined and contributed and asked questions, and to Prabhajot and of course Shipra, who has been maneuvering the whole program. Thank you very much and stay safe, stay healthy. Take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Professor Santosh.
Pleasure meeting you, Shipra.